Mike Bernard joining us on GameDaySportsRadio.com. Inside the numbers for Friday, December the 2nd, 2022. Mike, it's championship weekend. Are you ready?
I think I'm ready. And after this, we have Army-Navy and then straight to the bowls. Different schedule this year.
Yeah, it just seems like it used to be a gap between the end of the regular season and championship games. And then had a little gap. Then we started the bowl games. Now it seems like things are just seamless.
Yeah, remember 2020 was an odd year because of what it was. And we had championship games in mid-December, then straight to the bowls. But like you said, normally we have championship week and a couple of weeks off. But several years ago, they moved to Army-Navy as a standalone, which was a good move.
Right.
And so we'll have football every weekend from here on.
Okay, we're going to start it out this weekend with the Conference USA Championship game. That's going to be played in San Antonio, Texas. We've got North Texas, the Mean Green, taking on the Roadrunners of University Texas San Antonio. And these two teams, they've already met back on October the 22nd. San Antonio scored with 15 seconds left on the clock. Ended up winning that one 31-27. Rematch is in the same venue because of the way they decide where the conference championship games are now at some of the lower conferences. They've gone away from the neutral site, which I think is probably financially it makes a lot of sense. But anyway, so the Roadrunners, they're going to get to host again the Mean Green. What do you think about this one?
Well, that first meeting, there was numerous lead changes. It was a fun game to watch. The lead changed 3 times alone in the final 2.5 minutes. San Antonio ran for 257 that day. Both teams turned the ball too often in that game. San Antonio was favored by 10 in that regular season meeting. They won only by 4. Today, the line is 8.5. I don't see much value on the side. I will say this, a couple of numbers to look at. Underdogs have won 7 of the last 9 championship games of the group of 5 conferences. So I hope that's the case here because I have a 23-1 ticket on North Texas from back in August, but I don't have too high of hopes, but I'm hoping for an upset.
Well, on to the game that actually means something in the national realm. It's going to be from Las Vegas, USC and Utah. I mean, it's real simple for USC. You win and you're in. They're only lost to Utah back in October, 43-42. Southern Cal led 42-35, but teams were just running up and down the field. Utah scored with 48 seconds left on the clock. And what I thought was a brilliant move by Kyle Whittingham. We're not taking this thing to overtime and win or lose it. We're going to win or lose it right here with the ball in our hands. And quarterback Cam Rising, he ran a quarterback draw up the middle for the 2-point conversion, and that is the only blemish on the Trojans' record this year.
Yeah, whether it converted or failed, I thought that was a great move by Whittingham. I mean, who wants to see Caleb Williams any more than you have to, right? That game was a track meet. And here we are, another rematch. History shows that it's difficult to beat an elite team twice in the same year. No question about that. But Utah, they were in the same scenario last season. They beat Oregon 2 times. But I feel this Trojan team is much better than that 21 Ducks team.
Yeah, Lincoln Riley's crew, they can score almost at will. I mean, they offensively, they can play with anyone. Caleb Williams, I think right now, I think he's the front runner to win the Heisman this year. The question, though, is this Trojan defense. They have not been strong all year. You know, people want to say that, yeah, they only held Notre Dame to 17 points. Well, the Irish is not exactly what you would call an offensive juggernaut.
No, but it still seems to be an improvement. Utah, their opponent, they're built for these spots mentally, physically, emotionally. Whittingham is off the charts good in marquee games, specifically postseason games. And I know a lot of sharp people on Utah, but I'm leaning USC here. You know, their coach, Lincoln Riley, he knows this moment. They look like a team on a mission. They're laying less than 3. Some numbers on this game. The Utes have been an underdog 11 times the last 6 years. 8 of those times, they either won or lost by 3 points or less. So I'm going against that trend, but I lean to the Trojans.
We're going to kick things off Saturday in the Big 12 from Jerry's World in Arlington, Texas. Kansas State, TCU, Sonny Dykes, Max Duggan, and I've got to count myself in this group. When's it going to happen? When's the domino going to fall? But no, here they sit at 12-0. They punched their ticket to the college football playoffs with a win also, just like SC. The Frogs beat Kansas State 38-28 in the regular season, and this was after trailing by 28-10. But basically what happened in that game was the Wildcat defense just got wore out because they had 2 quarterbacks go down, and they played, except for one series, played the entire second half with a third-string quarterback.
Yeah, and TCU has heard it. The first meeting, that comeback was against a third-string quarterback, and TCU does not have the respect of odds makers. They're playing a 3-loss team. They've already beaten by 10 points, and now the point spread is 2 or 2.5. Odds makers would happily move the line, but listen, they don't have to move the line when the betting public keeps doubting TCU.
And the Frogs, you got to say this about them. It's not like they're front runners. I mean, they've won games. They've had, a couple of nice margins of victory, but they won a lot of close games. 17-10 Texas and the 29-28 walk-off field goal against Baylor just in the last few weeks. But last Saturday, they just went up and down the field on Iowa State, 62-14. Kansas State, you look at that common opponent there. Kansas State beat Iowa State 10-9. That was back in the early part of the season. I don't know if you can read anything into that, but I can tell you as a coach, what you want is consistency out of your team week in and week out. But you also know that every week you're going to get a different team, and a perfect example of that is the LSU team that lost to Texas A&M last week in College Station was not the same team that played Alabama. So it'll be interesting to see which version of these Frogs and which version of these Wildcats we get to see.
Is this the week TCU realizes they power rate outside the top 8? I doubt it. They couldn't give 2 flips about that, right? They might lose, but they think and play like they're an elite team. Some numbers on this Big 12 title game. There's been a rematch in the Big 12 title game 10 times. 6 of those resulted in a sweep. The other 4 were split, so no big trend there. The last 11 conference championship games, when the point spread was 3 or less, this is Power 5 and Group of 5 combined. The underdogs won 8 of those 11 straight up, so that leans to K-State. I kind of lean to K-State, but TCU's proved us wrong many times so far.
Let's move on to the Southeastern Conference and Atlanta and Mercedes-Benz Stadium. No rematch like we've got in the Big 12. And just last week, the stage was set for SEC fatigue to rear its ugly head once again. Had LSU beat Texas A&M, they're going into this game with the real probability of, if they win, they're going to be 2 SEC teams in the college football playoffs once again. But LSU took care of that, and they just they got blown out in College Station in an embarrassing fashion. This game really doesn't have any intrigue about it now. It's almost like another one of our championship games. This is being played.
Yeah, and the last 8 seasons, the SEC championship game, it's been decided by one score one time. Okay, so that was the 2018 game when Alabama came back to beat Georgia. LSU and Georgia have met 4 times in this game. All 4 were blowouts. 2019, LSU won 37-10. 2011, Tigers won 42-10. In 2005, Georgia won 34-14. And back in 2003, Nick Saban was the coach, and LSU won 34-13. Odds makers have Georgia favored by 17 to 18 points. The total is 51. And the reason that that total is so high is, number one, Georgia's really good, but also the history of this title game.
Yeah, like I said, not a lot of drama here in the SEC. I guess you can look at it and say the intrigue about this game is that it's being played to see where Georgia's going to be seated in the college football playoffs. Because if they win, they're going to stay at number one. And if somehow LSU upsets the Bulldogs, they're still in. They're going to be at number 3 or number 4, but they're still in.
Agreed. Here's some numbers. Power 5 teams that are favored by 16 points or more have won 13 in a row. That's straight up, not against the spread. That goes all the way back to 1996. A trend on the over-under for this game. The under is 14-2 the last 16 times Georgia has played a top 15 team that when that opponent is not Alabama. So that's a strong trend there, under 14-2.
Let's move on to the Big Ten from Lucas Stadium in Indianapolis, Purdue and Michigan. Purdue, very easy trip down to Indy for the game. Michigan, got to treat this like a road game. These two teams haven't met since 2017. Michigan won that one 28-10. Harbaugh's third season at the helm of the Wolverines then. You know, it's hard to believe that Harbaugh won 28 games his first 3 seasons, but there were a lot of Wolverine fans that considered him a failure because he couldn't best the Buckeyes. Now in his 8th season, he's the toast of Ann Arbor because he owns 2 consecutive wins over Ohio State right now.
Yeah, very difficult to do, obviously. Wolverines blasted Buckeyes to get here, and that margin of victory, Coach, could be vital. 2 things. It likely solidified Michigan's spot in the playoff, even if they were to lose. Secondly, it might keep Ohio State out. So that's another positive for Michigan because then they wouldn't have to play Ohio State potentially twice. Purdue represents the Big Ten West Division. They have 4 losses. The top 3 teams in this league are all in the Big Ten East. This is the 5th straight season. The Big Ten title game has a point spread of 10 points or more. So the favorite has been favored by 10 points or more 5 straight years.
Yeah, Ohio State's Ryan Day, after that loss, he said, you know, if we can get in the playoffs, we will be a dangerous team in the playoffs. And Nick Saban said just as much on the field after the Iron Bowl last week, and really can't argue with him at this point. But listen, star running back Blake Corum, he had to have knee surgery. He tried to go against the Buckeyes. He could not go. But it's not going to matter in this game because the Wolverines should win easily. But Michigan will miss him in the college football playoffs. But my question is going to be, how focused will this Michigan team be this week playing Purdue?
I hope they're not focused because I'm going to take the points here. Michigan did not have a letdown after last year's win in the big game over Ohio State. But this year, I don't think they have to have a win to stay in the top 4. And I'm looking for a letdown spot for Michigan. One concern there for Purdue is quarterback Aiden O'Connell. His brother passed away, so his mind's been elsewhere. But I'm going to take the points there. And you talked about Nick Saban and Ryan Day. Of course, those teams will be favored over anyone. They'd be favored over Michigan in a playoff game, but they're outside looking in. The question could be, is if USC and TCU both lose, does both Alabama and Ohio State get in? I think not, but it's possible.
Yeah. Let's move on to the ACC title game.
You didn't want any part of that, right?
I didn't want any part of that. I did not want any part of it. No. Okay. The Tar Heels of North Carolina and Clemson, you know, a few weeks ago, we thought this game might really have strong implications. And until South Carolina beat the Tigers last week, it still had implications for Clemson. And basically now they're just playing the game.
Yeah. Another championship game where the favorites won 5 straight. Here's a stat for you. Clemson has covered 15 of their last 17 games played in the month of December. Most of those were the ACC title game or a semi-final playoff game, so they've been outstanding against the spread. But those teams had Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, and this team does not. Tar Heels' last win over Clemson way back in October of 2010.
Okay, I'm going to take the bait. I don't want to do this, but I'll take the bait. And let's play what if. Okay, if things go as you think they should, you have a Georgia win, a Michigan win, a TCU win, and a USC win. Well, first of all, it'll be the first time that the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the Pac-12 have made up the 4 playoff teams. So it'll be the first time that's ever happened. Now, as you alluded to, chaos will start with a USC or TCU loss. Then who gets the 4th seed? And this is either going to be the easiest job for the college football playoff committee, or it's going to be the absolute hardest. I think those members are holding prayer meetings right now that the favorites win, because I don't think they want to get into oh my gosh, is it Ohio State? Is it Alabama? And I think that's the only 2 teams that you're looking at that have a chance to get in. Even if Clemson wins big over North Carolina, I think Clemson is out. Even if LSU wins over Georgia, LSU's not getting in with 3 losses. I think it comes down to, again, Ohio State, Alabama. It wouldn't surprise me if both USC and TCU lose, that both get in. I think your conundrum is if TCU, USC loses and maybe Georgia loses, LSU beats Georgia, then who gets in? I mean, it's, like I said, I would not want to be on the committee this year and have to choose between Ohio State and Alabama.
Well, Ohio State would get the nod if it's just one spot, in my opinion. Well, simply because they have one less loss and they've been power rated very high and respected by the committee all year. But here's the thing. Some people, and even in my industry, are thinking that if TCU loses, they stay in. I don't think so. Okay.
I don't either.
I think if they were to lose on some fluke, but I don't think so. I think the almighty dollar is going to factor in, and they want Ohio State in more than TCU. It's not a conspiracy, but if that happens, and if both USC and TCU lose, I think that it helps TCU's chances if they were to lose to get in. I don't think they want to set the precedent of putting a 2-loss team in.
Well, another thing is you've got to look at Ohio State gets in, you've got the possibility of a rematch between Michigan and Ohio State. And as we all know, those type rematches, they create a lot of buzz, create a lot of publicity, create a lot of dollars. And that's what this college football playoff is truly about. How much value and money can we create?
Right. And that the rematch last year, the team that lost the first one, Georgia, wins the second one. I mean, and that's kind of been the theme, but you're right. It's if they could have the Ohio State in there with a chance of a rematch of the big game, of course they're going to want that. And Coach, I was listening to you talk about all 4 conferences being in. Is the last time a Pac-12 team was in was the first year in 14?
No. There are 2 Pac-10 teams that have been in Oregon the first year, and then Washington. Alabama beat Washington, and I think it's 17. Yeah, it's 17. But it's been 5-6 years since a Pac-12 team has even sniffed the college football playoffs.
Yeah, and that Washington team was really good, and that game was closer than the scoreboard indicated. But
pick 6 right before the half changed the whole complexion of that game.
Yeah, well, and Peterson where he belongs now, doing broadcasting instead of he didn't know when to take a knee either, and I thought he was an outstanding coach until I saw that. But anyway, I feel like USC would be one of those teams like Oklahoma, when they would get to the Final Four, they couldn't get to, they couldn't win, right?
Right.
But they'd put a little scare into you. I feel like the USC team, if they can get past Utah, that's the team that You know, if your defense is not ready, get ready for a track meet. And if your offense doesn't step up, you're going to lose.
Mike, appreciate your time, and we'll be back with you on Sunday morning as you kick off your NFL day, and we'll preview some NFL games, and then we'll take a look back at championship weekend.
Hopefully we see some chaos.